Hello, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Careers Skills Series. Thank you so much again for joining us. We're really excited about the session that we've got today. I honestly can't wait. But just as we normally do, just to give you a little bit of context and some introductions, my name is Claudine, as you can see on the screen. I am the CEO and founder of Career. Career is a platform that exists to make sure that people really have the opportunity to fulfill their potential by being able to access the advice, the guidance, the opportunities, everything they need in order to really make informed choices about their careers. We have something for everyone. So if you're thinking about your career, you really want to get some support with your career, you can jump onto our platform completely free. You can ask questions to people who are working in industries you're thinking about going into. You can look at different content, you can access different opportunities. So do get involved and check out the platform. Equally, if you're someone that really wants to give back to people thinking about their first career, people changing careers and wanting to kind of try something new, you can jump on the platform too and really give back and share your experiences and insights by answering different questions. And finally, we really believe in collaboration. So if you are an organization that works with career seekers, works with mentors, has opportunities that you want to share with our community, get in touch. We'd love to partner with you. That's free as well. Like, we just want to collaborate and have an impact on as many people. So yeah, that's Career. But today we are obviously here for the skills series. Just to give a bit of that context around why we set up the skills series, we know that there's a huge skills gap, right, in the UK and even beyond globally. We hear this conversation happening all the time about the skills gap, the digital skills gap. We know that around 85 million jobs, I think is the latest statistic globally, are predicted to be displaced. But we also know that there's 97 million jobs that are likely to come in. And so what does that mean? We're looking at a situation where there are jobs with skills at the moment that are going to be redundant, and there are new skills that are going to be required for jobs in the future. And so the research has kind of shown that there are a considerable amount of employers who are spending less and less on training and upskilling their employees. So there's been a £5.1 billion decline in the last decade on spend on that training. And so we've really got a situation where it's going to be down to us as individuals to really think about our skills, think about our career choices, and just get ourselves upskilled to make sure that we have access to the right roles in the future, and that we can really thrive in our careers and just lead happy lives generally, right? So that's really the context behind why we came up with the idea of interviewing 6 incredible people just to learn more about skills, to learn more about having what it means to have an attitude, a positive attitude towards lifelong learning, and to try and get ourselves into a position where ongoing learning and thinking about our skills is, super common and just normal. At the moment, we know that 49% of adults, they leave compulsory education and never study again. And obviously, a lot of those individuals will end up being left behind if we don't think about upskilling. So yeah, I don't want to ramble too much, but that's kind of the reason why I got really excited about having this series. So today, obviously, we are interviewing Natalie Campbell. That is why you guys are joining us. And I want to read out Natalie's bio before I introduce her. But before I do that, just want to remind you, if you have any questions at all for Natalie, she'd much rather hear from you than from me. So definitely drop your comments on YouTube, on Facebook. You can put your questions in there in that comments box. So Natalie Campbell. So Natalie is an award-winning social entrepreneur and broadcaster. She is CEO of Belu Water, the UK's most ethical water brand. Prior to this, Natalie led on insight and innovation for the Royal Foundation and co-founded A Very Good Company, a global social innovation agency that worked with brands such as Virgin Media, Marks and Spencer, Channel 4, and so on. And they worked on embedding purpose and sustainability practices. As a non-executive director, she chaired the Nominet Trust and National Council for Voluntary Youth Services, and she was on the board of UnLtd, the Foundation for Social Entrepreneurs, for 10 years. In addition to her role with LEAP, the Mayor of London's Economic Action Partnership, she's a civil service commissioner, board member of the Big Lottery Fund, and the Old Park and Park Role Development Corporation. Everyone, we have an absolute powerhouse in the house. So I want to introduce you to Natalie, if you are with us.
Hello. Hello. When you were reading out my bio, I was like, wow, I'm tired.
You have achieved so much. I was just like, and the thing is, there's other things that can't even fit into that bio that I know you've also done. So yeah, kudos to you. And thank you very much for joining us to share a bit more about like how you managed to achieve that and thinking about that through the lens of skills. So I want to get stuck in right away. Oh, hello. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. I want to get stuck in right away and just, start the conversation around skills, but really start with thinking about, I guess, setting the tone from your perspective and learning about what a skill means to you. How would you define a skill? What does a skill look like? Yeah, over to you.
So for me, a skill is a thing that you can almost do on autopilot without having to think about it. It's the muscle memory that kicks in. So riding a bike is a skill, driving a car is a skill, cooking your favorite meal is a skill. And so as that translates to the workplace, it's all of the things that intrinsically make you uniquely you, because everyone has a totally different pool of skills that enable them to do well. And I loved your introduction because it reminded me just how important skills are. And there are learned skills that we learn through the education system. There are skills that you learn through street smarts. There are skills that you learn through your family dynamic. And actually the ones that I guess I hold dear and that have got me to where I am are definitely the ones that I learned whilst I was in the education system. And there was a point at which, I was a bit of a geek. I've got undergrad, I've got 2 master's degrees. I've been on multiple fellowships because I was just soaking in so much learning. And so I loved your introduction when it was just a reminder of just how important it is.
Interesting. So let's start there, because I'm really interested in like hearing a bit more about your almost preference for learning skills in a kind of in that kind of environment, an intentional environment where that's set up for learning. Where did you discover that was the kind of best place for you to develop your skills?
Well, I loved school. I loved my favorite lessons at school, I should say.
I know exactly what you mean.
The ones I didn't like, no. But the thing that twigged for me was flow. Long before I knew what the word flow was, the idea of when you're learning something and you're just so curious and inspired, and then you can use it, that something magical happens. And so I was very intentional about the university I went to and the degree that I went in on. And when I was there, I realized there was a whole world of all of this other stuff that people learn. And so that idea of soaking up information, but also doing stuff, that's when it really came to life. And there's a whole backstory of me wanting to be a CEO and always being an entrepreneur. But university was the place where I really got to experiment with my own skill set that I'd learned pre-university, but then what I was learning right there front and center. So I set up a business at 19. At 21, I opened a retail franchise, all whilst learning about franchising. So I was doing franchising 101 in my last year of university whilst running a franchise. I switched degrees to what now sounds like a Mickey Mouse degree because it's independent consultancy and independent research. And I have a minor in like 10,000 things, but it's indicative of my life. But I'm learning to be a consultant. And then I set up a very good company. So there were all of these skills about consultancy and project management that I actually learned when I was 21. And now my recall for them, I'm like, yeah, that's from that moment. And then I studied journalism, and then I studied social entrepreneurship. And so all, there's things that I took away from those moments that make me a much better CEO, that make me a much better communicator. and have delivered successes like Badass Women's Hour that was on air, for a few years on talk radio when that format didn't really get much airtime. So I can't undersell the importance, I think, of that intentional learning. And it doesn't need to be university, but creating time and space for you to just indulge your curiosity, I think, is really important.
Yeah, we're going to come back to that. I want to go a bit further back to the beginning, because you were talking about some of the skills that you learned pre-university and just getting that chance to really hone those skills at university and beyond. But what is your kind of earliest memories of actually developing a skill? Particularly thinking about where you can remember the process that you actually went through, and that kind of journey to developing that particular skill.
So I was thinking about this as you sent it to me, and I think the first skill I developed was learning to read myself and read other people. Some very early memories, probably primary school into early secondary school, just those moments of being in the moment, but being conscious of watching what I was doing and what the other person was doing, and how my words and my behavior catalyze something in the other person.
Wow.
And as a consultant, that is one of the most important skills that you can ever have. As a broadcaster, really important. And so I remember that, and I think it's one of the things I do well. I can profile people really well without having learnt it. So I think that's one. And then decision making is the other one. Again, being very, very young, but being very sure of the decisions that I was making and what I wanted to do and where I wanted to go, without needing to ask other people or curate my decision-making ability from other people's ideas. And I think a lot of the most successful people that you meet know how to make decisions, and the people that struggle to climb or get to where they want to success-wise always look at their ability to make decisions.
And in terms of just thinking about that decision-making point in particular, what does that look like? What's that process? How do you actually develop the skill to be able to make decisions and be confident in that as well?
So I'm going to get a bit sort of existential here. To make decisions, you need to be brave. So the first skill is bravery, or the first component of it is bravery. I think the next component of it is a confidence in the outcome and being okay regardless of what the outcome is, which is almost is agency. I don't know if everyone watching will know the term agency, but having a high sense of agency and self-efficacy means that you don't need external influences to dictate your own ability to maneuver and operate. And so that's a really important part of decision making. And then I think the last bit is being able to take lots of bits of information in very quickly, process them, and get rid of the stuff that feels superfluous, and hone in on the right things to then make a decision that you feel brave enough to articulate and follow through, and then feel confident enough that if it's not the right decision, it's the decision that you made in the moment with the information that you had.
And in the circumstances where you end up in a situation where it hasn't quite gone to plan, or the outcome hasn't quite been favorable, can feel like a bit of a setback. But how do you kind of balance that emotion that you feel in that moment against undermining, your decision-making skills, for example, or kind of putting yourself in a position where you almost forget that pre-work that you've done to be okay with the outcome not being favorable? How do you kind of balance that in the moment?
And so as I'm saying this, I know it's probably not true of me when I was in my teens and 20s, but I keep it moving. So it wasn't right. Oh, well, I didn't die. People laugh when I say this. If death isn't an option, then it's okay. Doesn't matter what happens. It really doesn't matter. To be honest, you're not going to remember it in 5 minutes based on my brain right now. 5 years. And so, I didn't die. No one died. I didn't hurt anyone. I never make a decision that's about hurting anyone else. So really, does it matter? I think is the, brush it off, keep it moving. Maybe in my 20s, I probably felt it a bit more. But the reality is none of this matters, and no one is watching what I'm doing. This is, I think, when you make a decision and it goes wrong, the thing that sits with you is what other people think of what happened. And thinking about themselves. No one's thinking about you. No one's thinking about me. So just keep it moving.
Yeah. I think it's one of those things that it sounds like you were able to kind of do that as you matured, as you got older, as you kind of learnt, rather than it being something that, like, I don't know, is intuitive or innate and just comes to you. Is that fair?
It's muscle memory. So the more you do it, the easier it becomes, the faster it becomes. And that's why it's a skill, as opposed to being an innate, part of my DNA. I was just looking, scrolly thing at the bottom. That's cool.
Just bigging you up.
And so, I think it's something that anyone can learn and anyone can develop. And the more you do it, the more you make decisions, the faster you make decisions, the more confident you become. It really is a bit chicken and egg, really. Some people, they need to have all of those things to make a decision. No, make the decision, and actually you start to develop all of those attributes. And then the more you do it, the faster it becomes. But I had a lot of agency. I've always had a lot of agency. The bravery, I would say, is developed. The not necessarily caring about other people's response to the decision I've made, that's definitely developed over time. That's a maturity thing, definitely. But that sense of, if death isn't an option, I'm an adventurer, I'm an entrepreneur. If I'm not going to die, then I'll probably give it a go. Not jumping, skydiving related. That's not my bag. But business
really? Like adventure in business, but not with your body.
Not with my body. With my mind, I will push it as far as I think humanly possible. But my body, no. Me and the sofa, this is my comfort zone right now.
Well, at least you know yourself, you know what you like, you know you're about, that's it. So in terms of thinking about some of the skills that you've mentioned so far, would you say it's kind of, you've discovered that you have certain skills and then you've kind of developed from there? Or have you realized that you needed a particular skill and then you've kind of been intentional about learning it?
I think it's a bit of both. So at 15, I decided I wanted to be a CEO. So knowing that I wanted to be a CEO meant that I went on a journey of developing skills that would enable me to be a CEO at some point in my life. But equally, there are things, moments, situations that happened where, like I said, that moment when I realized that I could read myself and read other people, that just happened. That wasn't me thinking about the skill. That was me just realizing something about myself at a very young age, and then realizing that it was probably useful. I do think there's an element of serendipity, or universe conspiring to mold me into the people that we will become, because there's a reason why I remember that moment. And it goes back to agency. I believe everyone is here to fulfill their highest version of themselves, whatever that might be. And that isn't business related. It could be anything. So I think those moments stay there as a reminder of the things that make me uniquely me, and the things that I will have in my toolkit for whatever life I go on to have. And so I know that is important, because it stayed there, and there are other things like that have stayed there, and I'm like, okay, this is my thing. This is what I need for whatever life is going to throw at me.
And in terms of like thinking about, I guess, obviously having that pool of skills that you're like, yeah, this is all me. is there the opposite? Do you have a good grasp of things you're like, similar to the skydiving, but from a skills perspective, that you're like, do not call my phone for this. Do not expect this of me. I will build that team around me. Or yeah, I'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah. The don't call me is, so I'm an introvert. And so I have a limit to my capacity in terms of being able to externalize my thoughts and ideas and feelings. And so not from a work perspective, and you know, I think my friends will probably concur with this, it gets to a point, it's less about from a work perspective saying, okay, don't call me for this thing, but there's a certain point at which my friends know, just don't call me at all. Just, I have zero capacity to communicate, and I have zero capacity to engage in small talk. I'm not a small talk person. So if you want someone to go to a networking event and like shoot the breeze with people around the room, do not call me.
Yeah, I can relate to that.
If
I get that a lot.
One and find out everything about someone in 2 minutes, I can do that. Big scenarios, don't call me. What else would you not call me for? You probably wouldn't call me if you don't already know the answer. So this is a tolerance thing. So it's not necessarily a skill, but and it's an age thing. I've realized that if people can't bring themselves on a journey, I am not very useful in helping look at 10 options and still leaving with those 10 options in the air. And it's because it's my Heidi, I'm so decision focused or next step outcome focused that it's where my shadow side comes through. So I spend a lot of time with my team talking about shadow sides, and my shadow side comes through and I start to judge them. So I'm like, why can't you make a decision? Why don't you? I believe everyone knows everything they need inside, and it's whether or not they have opened up their own channels, pathways to listen to the thing that their body, their mind, their soul is telling them. And so I get very frustrated. So my friends know not to call me if they're, they just want to externalize all of their ideas about something and then leave the conversation that way. I'm like, so what are you going to do? What are you doing tomorrow? Yeah. And I will sit there and be like, call the person now. Let me hear you call them. Or write it and send it to me. Like, I want it in my inbox first thing, so I know that you've done it. I need the conclusion for my time in going through the decision-making process with you. So yeah, they don't call me for that.
Yeah, this is kind of scary because I'm listening to you and I'm just hearing me, which is quite something. I feel like if any question I ask you, you're going to just answer in a way that I might have done.
It's not by accident, right? To run a business, to move through life quickly, there are certain things, there are common things that people develop. And there are, of course it's going to chime with you, because you have to be able to make, when 10 options are presented to you, you need to know that those 2 are the ones that I'm going to focus on and work through, and I'm going to be okay with the outcome, even if it looks like those other 2 might be more important. Everything tells me that it's those 2. And it is a consistent thing I find amongst people that have large portfolios of work to deliver, teams, or that are building their own business. So
yeah. And if we think about the decision-making piece and having to kind of exercise the element of bravery, or if you're in a position where you understand where your boundaries are and you want to put those in place, some people just aren't in a position where they feel comfortable enough to do that. So maybe it's that they feel too junior. So how can they turn around to their manager and say, don't call my phone? So how do you navigate that? Or what would your advice be to someone if they're kind of navigating being in those situations where actually maybe do have to play the game, or they do have to go to that networking event that they know that they won't thrive in, and so on.
And so we've all been there, right? And I think there's a distinction here. I am the hardest working intern you will ever have. I am the hardest working shop girl. You know, I'm a retail girl, age of 16. I would get to work and I would be hustling from the moment I started till the moment that shop closed. And when the shop closed, Marcy and Morgan would make us mop the floor, clean the changing rooms, during sale changeover time. I don't know if anyone knows this, but you know, the staff are working until midnight, 1, 2 in the morning, doing all of the changes, and I would be there all in, committed. And so for me, it was never a case of being like, I don't want to do that, or I don't want to engage with it, because I found those experiences where you get to lean in and learn and engage and feel part of a group of other people that are doing exactly the same thing. And I will work hard for anyone that I really believe in, or for a business that I love. And so I think beyond skills, the question you should be asking yourself is, if you're going to lean in 300%, why are you doing it? Who are you doing it for? And what's the outcome? And then, from a boundary perspective, if you don't want to the networking event, actually you can go. And so there are lots of networking events, or events full stop, that I didn't want to go to, but because it was part of my world of work, I went, and I created a uniform sort of armor for myself that meant I could become Natalie the extrovert in that room, but I would find my safe spaces in those rooms. So I would gravitate towards smaller groups of people, or I would spend some time just walking the room for a little while just to get comfortable in the room. I would try and find out who'd be there beforehand and be very intentional about who I was there to speak to and who I was there to meet, have those conversations, and then leave. And I had to do that because I was apprenticing myself to where I am right now. I was on the come up, but I'm still on the come up. I'm still apprenticing myself, just in a totally different way. And so, yes, have the boundaries, yes, have the decision-making capability, but recognize what you need to lean in, what you need to put forward to get further and to expand yourself and to explore. And it's good to be outside of your comfort zone. But I think everyone should know, what's the point of this is comfort zone versus this will make me unwell. And for me, lots of people's energy and lots of people in a space makes me feel physically unwell.
Yikes. Okay, so moving on slightly, I'd love to hear about, and it may be that you don't have one, but I'd love to hear about if you have any skills that you have now that you kind of identified as a skill that you need to develop, but you actually found it challenging to kind of develop that skill.
It's not really a skill, but I'm not very good at doing one thing at any one time. So really small example, in the kitchen. Some people, if they're making dinner, would organize, prep, make the dinner, stand there, serve the dinner, eat, wash up. If I'm making dinner, it's like, right, so what else can I do in this kitchen whilst I'm in this kitchen? So we need to put the washing on. Can we do some tidying? I'm going to organize the shelf. I'm going to chop the ingredients, but can I chop the ingredients and have something in the oven at the same time? Oh, can I come up with a new... I literally do not have the capacity to do one thing unless I'm totally off. And if I'm off, I'm off. Like, I can sit in silence for a whole evening, nothing on, and just stare into space at the same time. But it's either or. And so that's something that, and it's not really the skill I need is the ability to move slower. I'm a patient person, but not with myself and with my own time. Just because I'm like, okay, well, if we're going to here, we might as well sweat the asset, which I say to my team a lot. How are we sweating the asset? How can you do one thing and achieve 3 at the same time? What else? I think that's the main thing. There's a lot of beauty in being able to do one thing in a focused way at any one time.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, because I relate, I'm like, yeah, but who needs to do just one thing? But I do know what you mean.
For lots of people that create amazing art and beauty and frameworks and diagrams, Excel models, because they're just doing one thing, or people that create amazing businesses because they've been focused on that one business their whole, or have an amazing career because they've just done that thing.
Yeah.
There are moments when I'm envious of the ability to do one thing and be at peace, content in the one thing.
Yeah. I hear that. And in terms of like thinking about being that person that does multiple things, do you find, and you were talking about like moving at pace and that kind of thing, do you find that you strike the balance well with allowing people to be at their own pace, and like how does that work? Or are you kind of expecting people to move as quickly as you?
No, for other people, I totally lean back. But I've managed to get to that place. So that's a learned behavior by being clear about the vision, purpose, where we're trying to get to, the overarching timeline to get to that destination, and the expectations around attitude, and then how other people get there and the timeline. It's totally theirs. What I need to see is that there is movement, there's thought, there's debate, there's strategizing, there's bringing in of networks. I need to see purposeful, meaningful activity, but I don't need them to get to the same place. And actually, a CEO that I will always be, and I should always be, 10 steps ahead. I should always be thinking about the next 10 years. And the best analogy for this, for me, is the helicopter lawnmower view. You know, as the CEO of someone building something, you are in the helicopter looking at what every single lawnmower is doing to build the shape of the company name. Whereas the person on the lawnmower is very much focused on what they can see in front of them, avoiding the obstacles and following the map that they've got in front of them, knowing that they're building this pattern that they can't actually see. And so for me, I make allowances for people to move at their own pace because I know it's all coming together. But yeah, anyone that worked for me in the early days of a very good company, I was definitely like, okay, we need to move quickly, not just for delivery, but also for themselves. I was very hungry for people to become the best version of themselves. And so I create lots of space and time for people to build a sense of agency and make decisions and become leaders and become my version of their best selves. And so I put a lot of energy into that. And I realized actually not everyone wants that.
Yeah.
Or at this moment, not everyone wants to be that person or to lead or to have that role.
Yeah, I think there's definitely some conversations happening more. Well, I've certainly seen and heard them in the past few years where it's kind of thinking about what progression looks like. And traditionally, progression has always included going into management roles and leading a team and so on. But actually, some people just want to be better and better and better at that one thing that they do and don't have management skills, but don't want them. So it's like, how do you recognize that talent when like that progression route often looks like leading a team?
And so I find this very often in some of my other roles where people that are technically excellent have become CEO and leaders of people when they have zero desire to build culture, engage with people, embrace people. And so they build organizations and businesses that deliver brilliant products and services and walk the walk or talk the talk in terms of culture and people, because technically that's what it says you should do in the manual. but
Yeah.
it doesn't feel like it. And I do think we need to find new ways of creating pathways for people to be the best version of themselves and to thrive, knowing that some people are better at creating systems, processes, frameworks for other people to do things. Others are technical, deep experts and should thrive in that vertical. And so at Belu, we're a small team of 9, but we have a good balance of both, and we're creating a structure that enables both types of people to thrive. And it's really exciting to be at this point in my career, knowing what I know, having been through the pitfalls of my expectations around team and how I lead and timelines and pathways and skills. And now I can go, okay, everyone can come to this as they are. And I'm going to assess everyone. So going back to my skill of reading people, understand who they are, what they can bring and where they can thrive, and create a pathway for them to do that still gets the business to where we ultimately want it to be.
And where you're like reading those people and thinking about where their value is going to come from and what their skills are, do you ever have a kind of view that certain people will just never be able to develop certain skills, or do you kind of have a view that if people want to and are intentional about that and apply themselves, then they can develop into those the people they want to be or the skills they want to have? Yeah, it's a little bit of a controversial question, but
I think I think there's a couple of things. When I was on the Claw Fellowship, one of our practices was not when we didn't focus on our weaknesses. We didn't work on our weaknesses, and we didn't have to develop our weaknesses, because ultimately they were our weaknesses. If we focused on our 3 strengths and excelled and thrived in those things, that's how we became exceptional. And so my pause was that I think I would be totally willing to accept someone who said, you know what, I can do this, this, and this better than anyone in the world. But these 3 things, it's not really here for it. It's not my bag. Because you can backfill and find people to support them. What you don't always get is people being exceptional. And so if you know that you can bring exceptional to a business, to yourself, to your life, actually, I think you owe it to yourself to really move forward into what you're exceptional at the expense of the things that maybe you're not, because someone else can backfill. But you need to be aware of those things. The awareness is the important bit, and being able to articulate why you're choosing not to develop those skills because you're focusing on being the best at that thing. I don't think anyone wants the world's best harp player to also be able to play the guitar really well, or to be able to stand on a stage and be a great orator and explain every single aria. I don't even know if it's an aria that goes with a harp, but I'm going to roll with it. That goes with the music that he or she is playing, because they are exceptional and the best. And I think we need to start to make those allowances for ourselves if we are serious about really being exceptional at that thing. My caveat is on behaviors. So I have 0 tolerance for people that say, I'm a brilliant mind, so I can be rude to people. That is not.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. We have a couple of questions, but I have one more that I want to ask. In terms of thinking about what you were just talking about in terms of I'm losing my question now that I was actually going to ask you. So where you've got individuals who, no, the question's gone. Let me go to these comments questions and I'll see if I remember. So we've got one question. What have you found has held you back most in your career, and how do you either mitigate that or address it?
What's held me back? I'm going to be really annoying and say nothing, just because I'm an entrepreneur and I was prepared from the age of 15 to run through the wall, to run through fire, to break through the glass ceiling, to do whatever was required to get the thing that I wanted to get. And so there were things that probably held me back, that for a long time I wasn't open to acknowledging or exploring. And you know, I struggle with this question, because sometimes when people ask it, they want to know, you know, has being a woman held you back? Has being a Black woman held you back? Has being a working class woman held you back? They haven't held me back. People have had biases and towards me, and but probably not given me the same airtime, or you walk into a room and conversations close because you're different and other. Did I even remotely let it permeate my brain or my body or my soul? No, for a really long time, I didn't. If I did, I wouldn't be sitting here right now. And so I know it doesn't help anyone that's, especially when you're on that career path and journey, and race and gender and inequity is so front and center right now. It's easy to let it consume you, but I can hand on heart say that the spaces in the rooms that I sit in, it's like Teflon, just bounce. Yeah. Kamala Harris said, you know, she eats no for breakfast. It's that same mentality. I was just in life, when people said no, I was like, oh, that's a question. They just didn't hear what I said. Let me just come back in. And, you know, I applied for the big lottery fund 3 times. On both occasions, there was nothing in my brain that said to me, I am not worthy. They do not want me. I was like, oh no, I just didn't say the thing that I should have said. Let me just go back again. And then the third time I was like, you need me. People, you need me. Get it together. And so, yes, maybe there's an element of arrogance there. But actually, it was just, I really did believe I could make a difference to that organization. I knew what I could bring. I knew my skills. I know my point of difference. I know that I wanted to advocate on behalf of lots of other people, communities that didn't have a voice around that table. And so it just bounced off. So a skill, that Teflon, be focused on what you want to do, and you know, these things just sort of disappear from your consciousness.
Yeah, not letting anyone stand in your way.
Yeah. And so over time, you don't even see it anymore. You just don't see it. And this will annoy some people, and I'm going to get the quote wrong, but that idea of you show people how they should treat you, and no one can make you feel inferior without your consent. It's that thing of, I never gave anyone any consent to make me feel any way other than brilliant. So my feeling was always that I was brilliant, unless I knew that I hadn't performed to my best ability. But that really comes from having a strong sense of agency, in spaces to decompress and not always need to be on or be brilliant even. So I know it doesn't help, because lots of people are really struggling to cut through. But if I can do it, seriously, and let me tell people, I am basic.
How can you just talk about being brilliant and then describe yourself as basic?
Because this is the thing, right? There is nothing about me that someone else could not develop. My brilliance is just that I believe I'm brilliant. I'm not a wonderful, brilliant journalist and an excellent writer. I'm not the best CEO or entrepreneur that you'd ever get. I'm not the best orator that you'd ever meet. I'm not a wonderful intellect. I'm not any of these things that lots of other people are. What I am is someone that is tenacious and committed to living my best life. That's it. That's the
like that. I need to live my best life more. Teach me.
Just commit to
it. The question I was actually going to ask you before, which I stupidly forgot, was where you were talking about kind of having those 3 skills that you know really well, and even just now when you're talking about like that, just that self-awareness piece of what you're really good at, how brilliant you are, all of that kind of thing. Where does one get that validation from? Like how do you get to a point where you can say, I have this skill, like I am better at this skill than anyone else in the world. I know I can add value in these ways better than anyone, and have that level of confidence. Because a lot of people that, you know, that are in our community are either just starting out or they're changing careers and you know, might be kind of junior to mid-level, and so might not quite be at, you know, senior enough levels to kind of have had external validation and so on. So yeah, interested in how you managed to develop that.
I think it's from wins and successes, but wins and successes come from putting yourself out there. And so I knew very early on that I wouldn't thrive based on who I am in a corporate structure straight out of university. So I didn't do the milk round. I actively created my own path. My own path was entrepreneurship, but I went into employment very quickly, and I went into the charity world, the voluntary sector, and then I moved into the corporate world on my own terms. So I walk in the room based on not being within that structure, but being someone brought in to be different as the default. And I did it very purposefully. So I think the things for people to bear in mind, if you're in an organization and you're thinking, okay, how do I build that muscle? Find something that's just yours, that you own, where no one is telling you what the shape of it is, what the strategy should be, the timeline, but you are deciding every single bit of that outcome, whatever it is, whether it's a side hustle, a 5 to 9 project, writing a book, drawing a painting, finishing a puzzle, just something that you own. And the cumulative nature of winning, of completing, of success, it just builds up in you to the point of, like I said before, that muscle memory. You just realize that you move and things happen, and they happen well. And if they don't, you were brave enough to put your hand up or move forward or try that thing when actually most others weren't. And so there's a confidence that comes from that. And also, as much as I said, you know, it talks about the arrogant bit, I am low ego, and I'm low ego because I do not save lives. I'm not doing brain surgery, you know, and that goes back to my point of being basic. You know, I'm not determined. You know, I didn't come up with the construct for DNA. I'm not doing that. I am really focusing on living my own best life, and so no one can validate or tell me that I'm successful or unsuccessful. My only barometer is myself, and so it's not a skill. But the thought for everyone is, what's your barometer for what a successful life looks like for you? And what are you doing on a daily basis to get there, to shape, to mold, to live that life? And get those wins, those yeses. So I used to have a thing, you've probably heard me say this before, but the 3 yeses. Working out what the 3 key yeses are to any significant project or change or thing that you're doing, by where even if you stepped back from it, the thing would happen anyway. So when I was opening Morgan, so my retail franchise when I was at uni, my 3 yeses were, I needed Morgan to say yes to the lease, I needed the landlord to say yes to a 10-year rental agreement, and I needed the bank to give me 100 grand. If I got those 3 yeses, even if I decided I didn't want to do it, someone else could step in and make it happen. And it's what are the 3 sort of strategic pillars that will enable the thing to fly. And now I don't even think about it. In anything I do, I'm like, okay, I know it needs to be this, this, and this. And I can cut through everything else and it's like, no, these are the things that we need to focus on to move this forward. So I hope that helps people. I've realized it's really hard to be reflective on the smaller steps that I was developing in my teens and 20s, where I am now, because a lot of it is so automatic. And so I really have to think about it. So you're making me think about it. Thank
you. Sorry.
Standard Thursday.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm thinking, I'm like, after this interview, I need to sit down and think about the 3 yeses for what we're working on at the moment. So it certainly helped me. But yeah, hopefully other people are finding this useful as well. I think one of the things I want to explore is, well, actually, let me go to the questions, because there is another question here. And I have said that those watching have more important questions than me. So there's one question that says, how do you think about balancing technical and non-technical skills?
So personally, I think you have to have a 50-50.
Interesting. Okay.
And that's because, well, it depends on what you want to do. For me to be a CEO, it's not enough to be 100% generalist. There are things that I need to bring to the business that's technical expertise to make the business fly. And it's also a thing of, if everyone around you disappeared, what could you roll up your sleeves and do? And I think specifically when you're apprenticing yourself to the success pathway in an organization, being a technical expert. So, and when I'm using technical in the broadest sense, so being a project manager, so I trained to be a project manager. I did Prince 2, and Prince 2 was the thing to do. I trained to be a journalist because I wanted to understand digital media and broadcast and the medium of communication in a really deep way. I trained myself in entrepreneurship. I became a technical expert in the policy, design, ethos, philosophy of entrepreneurship. So I wasn't just doing it. I was reading the textbooks about the infrastructure of it. And I went on to design policy to enable it. So I think you have to have both. I also think we're in a world of lots of people talking and lots of people putting out information, content, sharing based on a thing they did one time. It's a bit like someone setting up, and I'm going to get in trouble for this, but someone setting up a Jamaican restaurant because they went to Jamaica one time and ate a patty. Doesn't work. And it really gets on my nerves.
Yeah.
But actually, I really don't mind you setting up a Jamaican restaurant if you apprenticed yourself and brought the tech. So you bring in the technical, you apprenticed yourself and you lived and really understood the food and the culture, and you make the food better than anyone I know. And that doesn't mean you need to be from Jamaica to do that, but you apprenticed yourself into it. So that's the technical bit. But I think there are lots of people, and social media, I'm going to say, is a channel for this. There are lots of people that decided on Monday that they want to help people live a good life. And there is nothing that they have ever done technically that gives them the skill set to do that thing. And that's why I think actually the world is going to gravitate to people that actually really know something versus people that say know something.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Say again?
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, and it's interesting you mentioned social media, because I think it's almost allowed people to kind of create some version of themselves that it comes across as some kind of expert, without having to really do the work that the experts have done to be skilled in that particular thing, which is very interesting.
I don't want to put an age thing on this, because I don't think you have to wait until you're 60 to become an expert in it. It's you devoting your curiosity, your intellect, your time, your geeking out on something and living it, really living it before you try and deliver it for someone else. It's a really bad sort of example, but Sister Act 2, where she says to Lauryn Hill, if you wake up every day and all you can dream of, the only thing you can think of doing is singing, then you're a singer. No.
No, Lauren.
just because you woke up that day. So Whoopi says it to Lauren, just because you woke up today and you're like, I'm a writer. No, when you've, and it's, for me, it's a physical thing. When you physically move yourself into the art of writing, into the art of communicating, into the art of taking something out of your mind and putting it on paper. And the key thing here, I didn't say you needed to be published. No, someone might not ever buy your book, but it's the act of really enveloping yourself in that thing. Then I think you have every right to share that thing or claim to be a technical expert. But if you're just tinkering on the sides, then no. And I think this is the thing that shows up in the workplace between an excellent project manager or an excellent accountant or an excellent actuarist or an excellent computer scientist. They live it, they breathe it, they know everything about it, they understand it in a way that they make it real for other people. Those people, I think, are invaluable as we move into this new world.
And on that new world, and I'm conscious that we're running out of time as well, and I've so many things I want to ask you, but I know you won't let me take up more of your time tonight. So thinking about that new world that we're moving into, and I mean, we started out by talking about the lack of, I guess, people upskilling themselves and preparing themselves for that new world, and making sure they've got the skills to be able to transition into that. What actually needs to happen to bring that about? How do you inspire someone to change their attitudes to learning and think about what they're curious about, devote themselves to developing those skills or learning about that particular area when it's just never occurred to them to do that before?
I think it's about the right teachers and coaches appearing for that person at the moment that they need it. So what does that translate to? If you want to build that curiosity, it's find people that you work with that light up when they're talking about their work, that really thrive and can while away the hours building a model or a spreadsheet or taking photos or looking at the detail of an artwork or a print, or that can talk for days about all of the ideas that they've got for a business, whatever it is. It's when you see that inspired thing in other people, I think it inspires you, it inspires us to find it in ourselves. And then I think everyone has to go on their own individual journey to get it. I can't stop with the movie references. And so anyone that's interested, that's still a bit like, okay, what the hell is she talking about? Joseph Campbell, The Hero's Journey, it's the backdrop for any Marvel, Star Wars, Transformers movie where, a person, an actor, but I don't mean it in the term the actor is an individual, realizes there must be more, but they don't know what more looks like or what more is. They just feel a discomfort in the space they're in. And then they go through trials and tribulations. And it's exactly as you said, there are moments of wins and then a loss happens. And then there's a defining moment when they realize they either stand up and they fight and they move forward for the thing that they want, or they die. That hero's journey is the thing that we all experience day in and day out. And all that happens, I was about to say, the more successful you get, it's not necessarily aligned to success. All that happens, the more you commit to living your best life, is those hero's journey moments happen faster and faster and faster. So in a day, I can move through failure, triumph, jubilation, loss, win, conclusion, versus it being a year of that play out. Yeah. Or it might be multiple stories going on at the same time. So for anyone interested, look up Joseph Campbell, The Hero's Journey. There's a brilliant quote in there that I know you've probably seen me put on a screen before, about us not being on the journey, this journey to save the world, but on this journey to save ourselves. Fundamentally, that is the only obligation we have whilst we're on this planet. It's to save ourselves and give ourselves the best life. And intrinsically, in doing that, you will create so much more value for everyone else around you, just because you're going on a path of brilliance.
I had another question, but I feel like that's too good a note to end on. Like, we can't end on any other note but that. And there's comments coming in saying how powerful it is. So I'll be doing an injustice by asking another question and overshadowing that answer, because wow, that's very powerful, like people are saying. Natalie, thank you. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much for sharing, for being so candid and authentic, as you always are. And thank you for inspiring me to have a drink tonight as well as we chat. I finished mine.
I've been talking.
But no, it's been awesome. Super grateful to you for joining. So thank you for giving up your evening to be with us.
And thank you for doing this. Again, this is you giving back to other people based on a desire to, I hope, live your own best life.
Yeah. Hopefully we can help people do that. So thank you very much. So that brings us to the end of our 5th skills series episode. Thank you very much for joining and for sitting with us as we hear all those gems from Natalie. We have our final episode in the series next week, and we'll be interviewing Marvin Harrison, the CEO of Dope Black Dads, and he's killing it in all different types of ways. And I've already had a conversation with him to prep for this, and he is already kind of got so much insights and gems to share with you guys. So I can't wait for that interview next week. But thank you very much for joining tonight. As I said before, you can definitely sign up to the platform if you're thinking about your career options and really need some support. Definitely sign up. It's completely free. If you want to give back to someone else who's thinking about their career, maybe their first career, changing career, join the community, answer questions, and share your own experiences to help someone else. And finally, as I said before, if you are an organization that wants to collaborate with us and wants to share your opportunities with our community, jump on board. We don't have impact on anyone unless we're collaborating. So get involved. But apart from that, good night. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you back next Thursday at 7 p.m.